That was lovely. Isn't he gorgeous? We had such fun together with his wife, Debbie, in New Zealand. It was absolutely marvelous. Well, as my mother always used to say, it doesn't matter how bad something is, as long as you get a good story out of it. And so I had cause to think about that when I was in my mid-20s and I was living in Austin, Texas. I got myself this lovely plum job and I thought myself as a wonderful career woman. Now, my parents lived in the south of Spain, which sounds very exotic, but it's not really because, of course, we're English and it's only a 2.5-hour little plane jump. So it's like your parents, if you lived on the East Coast, retiring to Florida. Anyway, so I hadn't seen them for a year, and I really, really miss my mother. And so I was really looking forward to seeing her at Christmas. The only thing is I got caught up in a whole load of things, and I didn't book my plane trip until it was too late, till I could only get the bottom of the barrel of a kind of flight. So instead of going from Austin to New York, Malaga, which is where they lived, No, I had to book a ticket that was Austin to Houston, Houston to New York, Madrid, Malaga. I know, horrendous. But anyway, the day came, and I'd been seeing this guy for 8 months. And he said, Geraldine, this was the night before I was going to fly. He said, Geraldine, may I take you out for dinner? And I said, that would be lovely, absolutely lovely, thank you so much. And when he arrived on my doorstep, he had this huge parcel, beautifully wrapped, with an enormous bow on the top. I said, how lovely of you. How very kind, how lovely. He said, Geraldine, he said, don't open it now. Wait until after dinner, after we come back from dinner. I said, fine. So we went off to dinner. He took me to a lovely little fish restaurant. But he seemed rather quiet, a little morose during dinner. And I thought, oh, how sweet. He's missing me already. How lovely. So anyway, we got back, and I said, can I open it now? And he said, yes. And I ripped off the paper, and inside was this absolutely beautiful suitcase. I mean, seriously beautiful. It was top of the line. It was tapestry and suede with sleek lines. And I said, how lovely of you. How lovely of you to give me a goodbye present. I said, but I'm only going away for 3 weeks. So he said, no, Geraldine. He said, you don't understand. This is a goodbye present. I'm breaking up with you. Oh. And he left the room, and I heard the front door close, and then I saw his taillights going down the hill. I mean, wasn't that awful? I mean, seriously. Awful, yes. And I thought, I hope I get a good story out of this. But I started to feel queasy. All things come around. I started to feel queasy, and I thought, I know I liked the man, but surely I didn't like him enough to feel ill about him breaking up with me. I realized not very long after that it wasn't breaking up with him. It was probably one of the shrimp he'd fed me that evening. I had a really bad case of food poisoning. Now, I know you've all got vivid imaginations because you're storytellers and story listeners, so I won't go into too much detail, but just say I exploded out of both ends of myself. All night. It was dramatic. I'm dramatic. It was dramatic. Oh, dear Lord, it was. So I spent most of the night going between the bathroom and packing my case. I decided to take his lovely case with me. I thought, no wonder he gave it to me. He wanted no impediment to make sure that I actually left the country. I mean, what a cheek. So the next morning I got on the first plane. I was so seriously sick. That was the one between Austin and Houston. When I got on the next plane, the air hostess took one look at me. She took pity of me. She moved my seat and she put me across from the restroom, which I'm very grateful because I actually wore a hole in the carpet between the two of us. So we got to New York, and there was a long layover, thank goodness, because I had to go to another terminal, and I had to zigzag my way there, going from restroom to restroom. And I became personally acquainted with a large amount of the porcelain in JFK. I got on that plane. By the time I got to Madrid, I couldn't eat anything. I had a fever. Everything was coming out. Oh, dear Lord. It was horrible. I don't think I've ever felt so sick. Everything in me ached. Just what you want to hear, of course. But anyway, everything in me ached. And at that point, I didn't care about being a career woman. I just wanted to see my mother. I knew if I could just smell her, just smell her perfume, if I could just hug her, everything would be all right. I just wanted my mama. But no, I knew that once I got to Madrid, there was a very tight turnover to get on the next plane to Malaga, which is where I would be seeing my mother. I just had time, I knew, to get my passport stamped, get to a restroom, that was essential at that point, and to get on the next plane, and my mother would be there in Malaga. And so I got my passport stamped. I thought, oh, great. And I started to run when someone stepped in front of me. It was a Guardia Civil, which is the Spanish police. Now, this was a very long time ago. This was just a few years after Franco died. People were terrified of the Guardia Civil. They had the most enormous power. I mean, people would be taken into custody and you'd never hear from them again. And he just stared at me and said, "Uno momento, por favor, señorita." Now, I felt really queasy. I felt my stomach clench. And so I said to him in my best Spanish. However, I've never been terribly good at Spanish, and I was probably at my best at that time, and I really spoke it like an enthusiastic but not very intelligent 8-year-old. And so I said in my best Spanish, "Señor, please will you let me go, because I need to get the next plane, I need to see my mother, and I need to visit a restroom, and I'm afraid if you don't let me go, I'm in danger of throwing up on your boots." At least that's what I thought I said. Clearly, what I actually said was, "Señor, I have drugs. Would you like to buy some?" Because the reaction was absolutely huge, and he started bellowing something out in staccato Spanish, which of course I didn't understand at all. And this enormous lady appeared, must have been his assistant, who I'm sure she was terribly sweet, but she was very large-bosomed, and she looked like a cross between Hulk Hogan in drag and Attila the Hun. And she said, "You come with me. You come with me for strip search." Oh. So she led me to this little room, the kind of interrogation room that people didn't get out of. And I thought, am I ever going to see my mother ever again? I mean, am I? So she made me take all my clothes off, and again, I will just be, vivid imaginations, I mean, far more than other audiences, and so I will just say that every orifice was thoroughly inspected. And of course it was really embarrassing. However, I'm sure many of you understand that when you, for example, you're really sick and you go to hospital, you don't care who looks at what, because you just feel so sick. And that's really how I felt. But it meant that I missed my plane. I couldn't get on another plane to see my mother for 6 hours. And as I was sitting there waiting, I thought, I don't want a story out of this. I never want to think about this dreadful incident ever again. And so I pushed it down into my subconscious, which is where it stayed for well over 25 years. And then I got a new job. I became the Protestant chaplain at the largest men's prison in Maryland. I know, bizarre, isn't it? Anyway, so I was sitting in my office one day, and I had a few of the men sitting around there with me. And there was one young man, and he really loved his family. I knew he did. And he had pictures of them tattooed on his neck, because he said that was the only way he could keep close to them. And so he was getting rather irate. He was getting quite upset. And in fact, he was getting so upset that the vein here was throbbing, and his mother was dancing. It was fascinating, really. And he said, "Chaplain, you could never understand how humiliating it is when we have to go and see our families." He said, "You wouldn't ever understand." He said, "You realize that we have to be strip searched." And I did know all about the squat and cough procedure that they have in the hospital. He said, "That's why you could never understand us." He said, because it is so humiliating seeing family and being strip searched there and on the way back. He said, "You couldn't understand." And out of my subconscious came these pictures. I saw these black shiny boots and this serge uniform and the black shiny hat. And I thought, "Mother, you were right. You were right. It's always good to get a good story out of something. And I realized that the first of many bridges was about to be formed between me and these men. And I said, I wouldn't be so sure that I don't understand. Gentlemen, let me tell you a story. Thank you. And thank you.